The S&P 500, the Nasdaq 100. I was a little bit skeptical about making this video today. I don't like doing weekend videos, but we have a holiday tomorrow. We have the debt ceiling getting resolved supposedly tonight. And I think there's the things we need to talk about. Okay, we need to talk about the movement that we had over the past 4 or 5 months. And I want to go over a few things in depth. Now, bullet points just so you can understand what we're going to be talking about here. We're going to have the debt ceiling, obviously, go over what's going to be happening throughout this week to be looking forward to. The Fed tone with PCE, because I think that's something that's it's not even talked about. No one really cares right now. Talk about that. And then rumor versus news, buying the rumor, selling the news, and the impact that we'll see there. These are all big topics that I've seen from Twitter and other social media that you guys have been asking. So I think we need to attack these more in depth, less charts, more opinion on where we're going as a market. Before we get into that content, though, I have to ask you to consider doing two things: like and subscribe. It helps out tremendously. We go live every single day here on the channel as well at 10:30 a.m. Central, Monday through Friday. That's when most of our content does get released. Also, today's the newsletter day. You can go to our website. It's absolutely free. You get a view of everything that's happening. You can go and look at previous newsletters. It gives you basically everything over the week to be expecting, key levels. So you kind of have a little bit of a cheat sheet throughout the week. We're not selling you anything. We pay for this out of our own pocket. So again, I recommend subscribing. The link is like somewhere down below. So check that out. So let's get really quickly back in here. I want to just throw the charts, just get them out of the way real quick, because I know people have questions. Now, for anyone saying that you're in a downtrend, you're maybe bearish, you're getting slammed, I don't know. Okay, so we're still saying, you have this major downside. Let's just quickly look at what's happening. Let's just quickly look. You have the downtrend from, December 2021, you peaked into essentially beginning of January, which you broke out of. Okay. Since then, you've obviously just been pushing up and up and up. You mount to the 200 SMA on the weekly and on the daily as well. And we continue to make higher highs and higher lows, pushing up. Is this sustainable? Who knows? I'm not going to give you an answer there. I still, again, you know my opinion if you've been here for any time at all. This is looking very strong, very similar to some of the reaction we saw back in 2021 into the end of 2021. We saw a lot of this, from basically January into June. A lot of this upward movement, right? Just more chop here, but still great movement to the upside. So you're seeing very strong reaction, a very good reaction of buyers on tech specifically. Now we go into something like ES, and going somewhere with this really quick, you can still see decent reaction, but this is going back more to October, more slow and steady, but you are still doing what? You are still making higher lows and higher highs. Again, a more impressive chart if you really ask me. People keep saying, well, Tyler, the S&P 500 isn't tracking what's happening with, tech. And I agree. It is not going up as much as tech right now. But if we look at the chart, you've been making higher lows for a longer period of time, almost 3 more months. Just saying, the writing is on the walls. You can also see you're trying to break out of this range. You can also see all the major key levels, which now you are mounting or trying to mount above. Okay? You can see those. We're not lying. It's clear. They're there. It is what it is. This 402.9 goes back here. You can actually see 402.10, 402.09. You're breaking back above that now, trying to push back up. Okay, so these are all the levels we've been watching, in depth, etc. Dow. People want to talk about the Dow, and again, I think Dow, you've had a little bit of downside over the past 2 months. But again, it's worth mentioning the Dow had the best recovery in October. It went literally straight up vertical and reclaimed almost 70% of the downside move it saw over the course of the year. And now you're kind of just flatlining there. But you are bouncing once again at the 200 SMA almost perfectly. Buyers showed up immediately from that point of view. That's the technicals. Okay, and I don't want to go too in depth to this today. Again, Monday through Friday, I do a lot of the technicals there. So I don't want to waste time and, drag this out there. First thing I want to talk about is the debt ceiling. And I only want to bring up articles on the debt ceiling. Fed tone, I'll give you my opinion. Rumor news, I'll give you my opinion. With the debt ceiling, what's happening here? Now, there's a few things happening here. McCarthy's already said he anticipates 95% of Republicans to okay the deal. He believes they will. But I do want to highlight some of the bad or some of the counter side of this, the people that don't agree with the debt ceiling, okay? Or getting passed or whatever they're doing here, right? And it's important to understand that they didn't necessarily reach their goals of what McCarthy wanted. Okay. There is not a hard cap on the limit, right? It's basically there's a limit, it's pretty high, and they're going to revisit this back in 2025, which we'll get into that here in a second, because that's really that fine print there is extremely important. And this is ultimately why I believe both sides of the party came to this agreement, because I don't think the Democrats are really happy here, but I don't think a lot of the Republicans are necessarily enthusiastic about this either. Lindsey Graham, we do not intend to default on debt, but we will not support a deal that reduces size of the Navy, prevents continued technological and weapons assistance to Ukraine. Punting, and this is actually a good opinion, punting at your opponent's 1 yard line isn't a winning strategy, Republican Senator Mike Lee said on Twitter. And you had the more extreme Republicans, same opinions here, right? This is where I think a lot of people didn't like this on the Republican side. Roy complained on Twitter on Sunday that the agreement would leave intact the expansion of the tax collecting IRS set in place when Democrats controlled both chambers of Congress, right? So they didn't, again, we have to understand, like, politics, no one's going to be happy unless one is clearly beating the other. That's when you're going to get like one side that's really enthusiastic about this. I don't think you're seeing any Democrats that are very unhappy about this, because in their mind, they don't control the House, so it makes more sense right now that they're just like, look, we'll take it. We'll take what we can get here. We'll just we'll take it. So again, I definitely think there is give and go on both sides. I don't think this is a clear one for either. I don't think the Republicans did what they said and they like flexed and said they were going to do continually. But I don't think it's necessarily as bad as what everyone's saying. Again, they weren't going to let the market, default. It wasn't going to happen. Okay, McCarthy was not going to be the guy that was going to take all the heat. All these Republicans can say whatever they want, but at the end of the day, McCarthy would have took all the heat. He would have took all the blame, and nobody in politics, that's number one. You don't fall on your sword by yourself, right? There's no heroes in politics. Now, the next article gets a little bit more interesting. Dan Bishop, this is the guy, he's not out of Texas, but he's pretty big on what's happening here with the proposed deal. You're almost getting Zippo change the $4 trillion debt ceiling hike. Actually, it's so bad they won't give you, like I said, they won't give you a debt ceiling figure for what's actually being raised. Only that it's suspended until Q1 2025. Our bill was a year less. Now, this is really interesting because I want to talk about why that's interesting here in a second. You have more people talking about why they hate it, but again, it's going to get passed. In my opinion, it's going to get passed. We'll talk about that here in a little bit more of the video as well. Biden and McCarthy announced that the two sides came to an agreement in principle on Saturday at the release of legislative text come together early as Sunday. Treasury Secretary Yellen warned last week that without congressional action, the debt could default on June 5th, which again, that was probably premature. She was probably pushing it to try to force the hand, and it worked. Okay. And so McCarthy said that they're going to try to get this done within 72 hours of getting a vote done so they can move forward with this as well. Okay, but I want to go over the exact numbers here, the exact numbers of who's voting on this. So when we look at, this is the answer you're going to see here for your vote or to get an opinion on this. So Republicans narrowly control the House. It's not, it's not like a substantial lead here. When we look at this, hypothetically, I have to assume you're going to get a large portion of these Democrats that are going to side with this, okay? They have stated that you need the moderates from both sides to support the bill. But again, I personally believe it's going to be an easy fix. I think over half the Republicans will be okay with it. And I believe over 3/4 of what's happening from the Democrats will be okay with this as well. So I think it will pass. Personal opinion, I could be wrong. But again, this just gives you a better visual of what's happening there. And based on the numbers, you would succeed and do well. So opinion on the debt ceiling and opinion on where you're going from here. And this kind of ties in number 3. Everyone that's saying, well, do I buy now? Do I do this? Are we going to keep pumping? Or are we going to go crazy? I'm not on that team. I'm not on the team of saying that you have to keep going up. I think there was a lot of momentum into this play. I think it was definitely good for the market in the short term. I've been saying that. But I don't think you should be FOMOing into positions. I think you should be careful. be reactive. If we look at where we're at on most of these levels, again, ES is very close to breaking out. Like the S&P 500, it wants to break out up to that 40. This has been our target for a while, like 4320, 4300 flat. We've been saying that for a while. But like Nasdaq, if we look here at tech, like tech has, blown past most of our targets, and like our latest one was really like just dragging this down, was about right here, the top of this range we had from like mid-April of 2022. You broke above that and you're kind of mounting it out at the end of the day. And so, I mean, you have room back up to like 14.8, possibly 15,000 on Nasdaq. Now, again, I don't believe you should just be rushing and jumping into place. I think that's silly. I think that's a major, major mistake and dangerous. Okay. But what I will say is there's no reason, I keep saying it, there's no reason to start hammering shorts until you start seeing that side of the market prove its point, until you start making lower lows, until you start making lower highs, until you start getting rejected, until you start seeing sellers step back into the market aggressively, right? Until we start seeing data that really lines up with this, right? And that leads me to the second part of this, the Fed tone and PCE. Now, we don't have any Fed data coming out this week. To my knowledge, you don't have PPI or CPI, which is the next ones that are up. But PCE, it did rise. That number did rise, and it was surprising that the market did not care whatsoever, but it was totally siding with the debt ceiling. So right now, the debt ceiling has all control in the market. It has all influence. It's where everyone's focused on. That's all everyone cares about right now, the debt ceiling. This is all they care about. This is second tier. It will come into play. This will be important, but as of right now, this right here is all that matters over the course of this week right now. Okay. But I want people to be very vigilant. After this debt ceiling gets resolved, you need to start focusing back over here. This will become the most important thing in the market because we do have that next Fed meeting coming out. We had the Fed meeting that just happened, and it was very clear that Powell and the team wanted to lean towards pausing. It was very clear with their tone. They wanted to get towards the pausing and slowing down and letting rates do their job, and then letting the raising credit rates for individuals also start to impact the market and hopefully get unemployment to go up as well. That's what they wanted to do. So the fact of the matter that it's looking like they're going to raise rates at this coming meeting is not a good sign, in my opinion. Not a good sign, especially with what's happening with the debt ceiling. So that's just my opinion. So again, short term, debt ceiling keeps us up most likely. Next 2 to 3 weeks, I believe Fed tone, PCE, PPI, CPI is the most important thing we're going to be looking at, okay? Most important. We're seeing oil prices stay very low. They are very low. And you could have seen what happened with oil prices when they spiked to have a short-term effect on PCE and PPI and CPI, but it still doesn't come into play what's happening with the consumer and consumer spending still staying up while demand is dropping. It's not good for inflation. You're not seeing the real effects slow down on it. And as long as we keep spending, inflation is not going to come down. It won't. These are just the facts of the matter. But that being said, people are like, well, Tyler, if you have this opinion on inflation, how do you think the market can continue to go up? We need to understand, just because inflation is in the market does not mean you cannot continue to go up. It does not mean that. Right? Our market does not have to act rational. It does not have to respond to what's really happening behind the scenes. It took a long time for us to drop in the first place when we should have been dropping very, very soon, as a matter of fact. Okay? Even with the debt ceiling, right? Is it necessarily this bullish that we're moving up? Or is the market just looking for good news? Right? Because stocks were just so cheap. This is just my opinion, my view on the market, and what I'm looking at going over the next week. Short term with the debt ceiling, sell the rumor, that thing happening there, and then going into the next 2 or 3 weeks with the Fed tone and PCE. If you have questions, comment down below. I'll see you guys either tomorrow or Tuesday. Probably won't have a video tomorrow because it's Memorial Day. No reason to really be trading or talking about anything there. But if there's any news, I will be making a video. Have a good one, traders.